So in the redefining success, they need to discover or rediscover themselves, because success is not something that is maybe tangible, and this may be individualistic for from person to person. Success is not so much as tangible as it is mental.
Welcome to She Self-Invested. I'm your host, Lodisha, and get ready to tune into your go-to podcast to feel empowered, to show up authentically feminine in male-dominated spaces, while prioritizing spiritual self-care. Let's invest into ourselves together, starting now.
Hello, ladies. Welcome back to another empowering episode. I'm excited because we have our second guest of the season. Her name is Kimberly. She is a licensed professional counselor and ordained minister. She works with all ages, 17 and up, teens, adults, couples, and families. She specializes in self-discovery and working with military families, including her own experience of being an active duty military spouse. Kimberly has over 10 years experience working with people from a diversity of cultures and various backgrounds, including religions and non-religious beliefs. So let's turn it over to Miss Kimberly.
Hello, ladies.
Miss Kimberly, I'm so excited to have you on this episode. Tell me a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Okay. So I have a virtual private practice. I've been doing some form of counseling since around 2008. And I use a eclectic approach because I believe that every one of us is different and every one of us has different needs. So I try to tailor my approach toward the person who is sitting in front of me, whether that's on camera or face to face. I am a military family, so I've moved quite a bit, but now I'm stationary. We are back at home.
Nice. Okay, great. Redefining success, letting go of others' expectations. This episode for me feels a little bit like home, because I too suffered with only choosing a career because I thought this would make my family happy. And it took a lot of courage and self-belief for me to leave that kind of mindset behind to pursue a path of my own. I'm excited to get into this. But first, from your perspective, what are the most common external expectations that women face? And how do these pressures typically impact their mental and emotional well-being?
I would say that just trying to live up to another person's standards, whether that's their parents or whether that's their spouse or just society in general, that's probably just a roundabout of some of the external pressures that women face in general, like when trying to go into a career or find their passion.
How do these pressures typically impact their mental and emotional well-being?
Typically, it makes them feel like a failure sometimes, and because they did not live up to the standard that someone else had for them, and more pressure internally. So it is interesting how external factors can affect us internally, mentally, emotionally. But it does, simply because most of the time it is personalized when failure happens, or is viewed as failure anyways, because you didn't live up to someone else's standards that they had for you.
That's true. Do you feel like societal or cultural or family expectations shape our definition of success?
Depending on where you grow up, how you grow up, the environment that you grew up in, the household that you grew up in, whether it is spoken or non-spoken, there is expectations there in most households. I think that it has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, I agree. As someone who had a mom that was a little bit of a high achiever, naturally, I wanted to achieve great things too, because that's what I seen for her. But I had to realize that I had to choose my own path. And ever since I've done that, I feel like I found like a sense of self and a sense of inner peace for sure.
Mm-hmm. And so before you did that and you were trying to live up to the high expectations of your mom being an overachiever, you were affected by that. It was an external factor, but you were affected internally, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That is very true. But I think that was part of my story. It's just about finding out who I am as an individual, not just as someone's daughter or someone's friend or sister. It's just, who am I? What is my purpose here? What do I like to do? So if anything, that actually helped me grow and change my mindset around what does success means for me, which I feel like some women definitely struggle with, especially women that's working in male-dominated fields. If a parent might feel like, oh, well, you should have took a different route, or why didn't you choose a more traditional career, maybe like a nurse or a teacher? So that kind of can be a little bit challenging to express, but that's why it's important to know who you are and know where you're headed.
Absolutely. I definitely agree with that.
I wanted to talk about the consequences of living for others' expectations, which we kind of talked about it a little bit. I wanted to really pinpoint the negatives, the emotional and psychological costs of doing that. Personally, for me, when I was working in the film industry, I experienced burnout, anxiety. I kind of feel like I lost myself a little bit, even though I should have been happy to pursue my degree and I'm working in film and I'm doing all these big things. Like my family was happy for me and stuff, but internally, something still felt like it was missing. I felt a sense of emptiness and I experienced the burnout. I experienced depression, and it took me quitting a TV show for me to realize I was unhappy because I was not doing something that was meant for me. With that being said, I wanted to identify some of the external influences. What are some red flags that indicate a person is prioritizing others' expectations over their own values and goals?
One red flag is pretending. Yeah, like pretending. And so when a person is pretending, there yields little to no fruit in whatever industry or whatever career field they are into or chose to go in. Another red flag could be depression. It could also be burnout. They don't want to go to work, don't want to show up, and then just being lost.
Mm-hmm.
And being lost can look like different things depending on the individual. But you see some people that go into these career fields simply because it was expected of them too. Like you said, you were in the film industry and you were experiencing different things, but just didn't know exactly why. But confusion is another red flag because there's no concrete security in not knowing.
Yes.
Yeah. So I would say those are some red flags.
Yes, I think that's very true. And some things that I also dealt with, I'm pretty sure most women deal with, is the fear of failure, like the fear of upsetting family. That's something that occurred within me because I'm like, oh my God, well, if I quit the film industry, what would my family think? What would my mom think? Because she's into film. And I feel like sometimes we can weigh others' people opinions or expectations of us over what we feel is right. I feel like once you choose yourself, everything else comes next, like the happiness, the clarity around what you're meant to be doing. It just end up revealing itself.
Yeah, I completely agree. You know, the fear of failure will keep most people in a situation, whether they are sure if they want to be there or not. And that's where the confusion sets in. Like, you just feel uneasy. You don't feel like you should be there, but yet you're going to stay there because you don't want to disappoint the people who you value their opinion. So, yeah.
What do you think are some signs of someone having fear of failure? What does that look like?
Anxiety is signs of fear of failure, because I think the root of anxiety is fear of something.
Mm-hmm.
And then also just a person not knowing who they are, where they're going.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I think those are definitely some of the signs that I experienced.
Yeah, because how are you supposed to know, like, if we go and get in a car and we don't have a destination in mind, we're just sitting there, and that's just physically. So imagine mentally not knowing where you're going. You don't have a direction.
That's a good point. That is a really good point. When it comes to redefining success on your own terms, I kind of wanted to I want to really zoom in on self-reflection and the importance of introspection and understanding personal values as the foundation for redefining success. Personally, for me, when I made the choice to quit the TV show and just not work I believe I was out of work for maybe 3 or 4 months. But within that time, I was able to really sit and reflect and think about, well, what is it that I want? What is it that I'm good at? What is it that I like? Because I was unhappy working in the film industry for a reason. So why? And once I really doubled down on what I feel like success looked like for me, yes, I do like working in film. I like movies, but I have a love for live events. I have a love for music. I love the idea of conferences and workshops and speakers, public speaking. Once I really channeled what it is that I actually love, that helped me transition to working in the live event industry, and which is where I found a passion for rigging, which is the work that I do now. I also feel like setting boundaries with family and our friends or whoever is in your circle about what your success looks like for you, because it's about protecting your vision. It can't be what your mom think you should do or what my dad might want me to do. It has to solely be internal. So I'm curious to know, what practical steps can women take to start redefining success on their own terms, especially in environments where they feel pressure to conform?
I'm going to start with your first question when you talked about redefining success.
Mm-hmm.
I think in redefining success, a person has one of the steps, and we'll tie it in, that has to be taken is redefining self.
I like that.
Because success is not so much of a tangible destination as it is a mindset.
Mm-hmm.
So once a person is starting to redefine success, then they have to redefine who they are, because while you were in the film industry, something in you began to explore not what you didn't want to do because you already were doing that, but what you actually had the passion to do, which you were redefining yourself. That's how you figured out rigging. It was what you wanted to do. So in the redefining success, they need to discover or rediscover themselves, because success is not something that is maybe tangible, and this may be individualistic from person to person. Success is not so much as tangible as it is mental, right? Because some people can have all the cars, all the houses, all the movies in the world and still not feel successful.
Oh, that's a good point. It's a really good point.
So, and then another step in redefining success, you mentioned boundaries. So because boundaries are almost like a parameter that you want to draw around yourself to protect yourself from anything outside of that parameter, that's another step that I would recommend that someone who is redefining success may want to take, is to begin to draw the parameter around themselves and start setting the boundaries. But in order to set boundaries, you have to learn how to place things where they need to go.
Well said.
And people. So yeah, I think some self-discovery, some boundary setting, some perimeter drawing, and also putting things in places where they need to go in your life, like aligning it.
Mm.
And then once you have that plan, then it's execution time. And the execution may be difficult, may be the most difficult part, as well as enforcing the boundaries, because it is easy to write the boundaries down on paper or to say it to someone, but it is a little bit more challenging to enforce it, because enforcing it requires acting on it. It actually requires you to not only say to your mom or spouse or whoever it is that had these expectations or standards for you that, no, you're no longer doing that. And so because the change comes, people start feeling a way about that. And so it changes the dynamic of relationships and friendships, because you decided to redefine what success meant to you. And it didn't look like what they thought it should.
I agree. That's perfectly said. I feel as women, I feel like sometimes we can put ourselves in boxes and we can try to be so many different things for so many people that we put ourselves last. Like we want to eventually, if we haven't already, maybe become a mom or a wife, and we also want to have a career, or maybe we might have a passion project. I feel like sometimes we can just try to do so many things that we lose sight of our inner goal. And I feel like that's where it can be challenging at when it comes to finding peace and figuring out what does success look like to me, because I'm trying to do so many different things.
Yeah, I concur. Even if you've gotten married or not married, if you're single, you still have different hats and different roles that you play every day. Like you're a daughter, you're a sibling, you're an employer or an employee, you're a friend, and you're operating in all of these roles in life. And so when you're doing that, then yes, the majority of the time, what you would initially want and would prefer to be doing gets put on the back burner, because you're too busy trying to show up in all of these roles. And then you forget to show up for yourself. And then eventually, if the neglect continues, you forget how.
That is true. That's a good point. And I feel like that's where cultivating self-compassion and resilience come in at. Making time for yourself when you feel overwhelmed, or if you feel like you're trying to do so many things. Like personally for me, that's something that I had to practice. I had to practice compassion, self-compassion more than anything, because I feel like if I wasn't doing my best at work, or maybe I'm not responding to family quick enough, I just would beat myself up. And I think I had to reel it in and like, okay, I'm a human. Let's just be gentle with myself. I need time for me too.
Mm-hmm.
On top of that, I really want to speak about the role of self-compassion when it comes to overcoming setbacks and resisting the urge to revert to old patterns of seeking external validation. I'll give you a quick example. So when I decided to quit the film industry, of course, in the beginning, I didn't have a lot of support. People thought I was crazy. I shouldn't do that. I'm missing out on a big opportunity. How else am I going to make money? It was just so many things, right? So when I started transitioning to working in live events, things wasn't picking up for me. I wasn't getting that much work. And it was hard for me to find steady work. Opposed to when I was working in the film industry, I feel like I've always had opportunities coming my way. So it came down to a point where I was like, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't have left the film industry. Maybe everyone was right. I was wrong. How about I try to get back in? And you want to know what's crazy, Miss Kimberly? The funniest thing that happened? The day when I decided that I wanted to go back to work in film was the same day that the union strike. I believe the writers were on strike. The actors decided to strike. And at that moment, there was no film work. I mean, none. So I just thought that was crazy of me to try to go back to something, because maybe everyone was right and I was wrong. And I tried to go back to make everyone else happy, and it still didn't work out. And literally a couple months passed and my live event work turned around. I started getting more rigging calls, and that's when I started getting more into audio. It's just things just worked out for me because I was patient, and I decided to just wait and see what was on the other side.
Okay. And you asked, what role does self-compassion play in just overcoming setbacks like that? Because you considered that to be a setback.
I did. Yeah, absolutely. I definitely consider it to be a setback. And this is not even just for me, for most women. Maybe they're thinking about switching careers and maybe it's just not taking off as fast as they want. So they might think, well, let me go back to what was working. When in reality, it's just about resisting the urge to revert back to old patterns and just seeking external validations. So how can women cultivate resilience and self-compassion as they navigate the challenges of letting go of external expectations?
I would say resilience is built by resistance. So returning back requires no resistance, right? So for anyone that, it was in a position that they know that was not something that they desire for themselves and they have left, they have decided to put something in the destination and they have been given a direction. Having self-compassion is very vital because it becomes either you're feeding yourself well and you're pouring into yourself well, or with the lack of self-compassion, you're not. And so anything that you don't feed eventually dies, right?
Yes, that's true.
So basically, if you're not feeding yourself the goodness and pouring into yourself, hey, you made the right decision. You followed what God told you to do. Hopefully the direction came from God. And because you have that direction and that destination, it will come. I don't know if it will, but it may come a time where it looks better where you left. But the resilience is built in your resistance not to go back.
That's a good point.
So, yes, self-compassion is very important. Self-love is very important because the same thing that we would pour into someone that we love and we cared about and that we know was moving into a direction of something that maybe God has called them to do, or a direction where they have been given a passion to do, you would have compassion on that person, right? Yeah, but most of the time, or a lot of the times, compassion looks different when we're trying to give it to ourselves. But if don't feed yourself compassion and self-love and pour into yourself, then you die in those areas.
That's a good point. You mentioned God in this. So I wanted to ask, do you feel like God plays a huge role in our career success?
I would think so. Yes. If it is a godly person or a spiritual person or someone who believes in God, God doesn't need our permission to operate in our lives, whether we are spiritual, religious or not. But I do think that, yes, God plays a role in it.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I only ask because this podcast is about spiritual well-being as well as women empowerment. And in most of my episodes, I do speak about how God plays a huge role in our success, in our lives, in our decisions, and how we feel lost, how prayer can change, and it can definitely play a huge role in where we lead next. Yeah. I was just curious because I heard you use that word, and I just want people to understand the importance of God, if that is your belief, because everyone is entitled to their own religious or spiritual perspectives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. That's right. But yeah, I do think that I think that direction comes from God. Other than that, who did it come from? Yourself or your parents or someone else who felt like they knew what was best for you? But yeah, I do believe that I do believe God plays a big role in success.
I agree. I definitely agree. And also, I feel like when it comes to what direction to take, God definitely will guide you through. It might look like it's not working out, like for me when I was experiencing the burnout, but I had the film job, I had all the things. Why was I still unhappy? I definitely feel like He guided me out of that for a reason to put me where I'm at now. So
Yeah, absolutely. And also shut the door when you were trying to go back.
Yes, that's a great point. Definitely shut the door. I feel like for anyone who's listening to this, if you try to go back to a career or any kind of situation and it does not work out for you, that is literally your answer from God that this is not for you, and to be patient and to wait on what it is that you're meant to receive, not something that you want to receive, just what's meant for you. I feel like it will work out more naturally.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Doesn't mean that it's going to be easy. And it doesn't mean that it's going to look good according to our view.
Yes.
But it will work out, because even though you weren't initially getting, the job opportunities that you wanted in the beginning, when you decided to go in that direction, it started to look better,
Yes.
started to pick up. I encourage anyone that is uncomfortable in a position that they're in to definitely seek direction. Seek direction.
That's true. Seeking direction and external help, maybe even like a counselor, a therapist, or someone that they truly trust, can definitely help guide their decision even more.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I know of this lady that she was running a physical therapy office, and she did not want to, and she had voiced several times that she felt like God was leading her away from that career field. Well, she stayed in it, decided to stay in it because it was good money, and so some people define success as monetary values. But like 6 months later, the entire building closed.
What?
Yeah, the entire building closed. And so now she's in a whole total different career field. She went another direction. But yeah, absolutely.
Wow. Do you know if she's happy in her new field or not?
She is.
Wow, that's amazing. That is so amazing. You just never know where God is taking you. Like, oh my goodness. I just get so happy talking about God. Like,
you never know. You never know. That's why it's very important to ask, to find out, what direction is best for you, especially if you're experiencing some things in the current role that you're in, and you know that is not for you. Well, that's the first step of knowing that it's not for you. Then what is?
That's a good point. Since we're kind of on that subject, I feel like self-doubt can definitely creep up, right? Which is why it's important. I think it's important to go to God when you have self-doubt. But let's say in situations where we're overwhelmed and we're kind of not really investing into our spiritual side, what happens when we deal with criticism or disapproval when we are trying to redefine what success looks like? I wanted to touch on the importance of a supportive environment.
Very important. Vital. It's about equivalent to, a person as the environment that an acorn falls in, because you will see more oak trees than you see acorns. And it's because of where they fell. And because they fell in an environment that was not able to cultivate their growth, well, they never reached the full potential. And I think it's the same thing with humans, with people. Like, our environment, it can either help us grow or it will help us wither. When self-doubt sets in, it's important to have someone who can push you in the direction that you initially said God sent you in, whomever sent you in. It's important to have those people to remind you of the motivation and inspiration that you initially had, because you will run into bumps in the road and maybe some potholes here and there, but it doesn't mean that that's still not your journey. It just means you have to have encouraging people around you that can continue to push you to move forward versus, I'm just going to turn around. Yeah, so environment is very important because it determines whether you become or whether you still continue to have the potential to become.
Yes. Yes, I agree. I found out the importance of a supportive environment when I moved to Austin. And it's just different when you receive support from strangers. Like everybody says, strangers will support you faster than maybe family or friends. Understood what that mean once I went somewhere without family or friends. Right?
Yeah.
I have no choice but to network. I have no choice but to get out of my shell and build these relationships. And what do you know? Now, like, I'm around people that genuinely supportive of what I'm doing. Not saying that I didn't have that back home, but it's just different here. When you're around people that don't know you, it's easier to just be yourself, and they're going to accept it because that's who you're showing them. So it's vice versa. I think it's very important for people to surround themselves with a community that respects and encourage them on their personal journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Very important. Very, very important.
What advice do you have for women, specifically women that work in male-dominated fields, that encounter resistance or criticism when they choose to pursue their own definition of success?
Let's see. I would definitely tell them to make sure that they have a great community of people surrounding them, and make sure that they have if they are a godly spiritual person, make sure that they cultivate the relationship with them and whomever they believe in, because there will come times where you will have to depend on someone other than you. In a workplace where it's male dominated, well, it's going to resemble what it is. And so if there's not many females there, then it won't be catered towards having females there. So that means that there has to be an adjustment made on somebody's part, an adaptation, an adjustment, or something like that. And in adjusting, I would recommend that it always be in a positive perspective. And you can and look into changing the things that are not present, because just because it's not present doesn't mean it can't be so.
Yeah.
So if there's some things there that needs to be changed for a woman to feel more comfortable in the role, or to bring more women into the role, begin to implement and integrate that change.
I love that.
Yeah, change the atmosphere. We have the power to do that.
Yes.
Change the environment.
Be the representation.
Yes, representation that you don't see.
That you don't see. Exactly. I love that. I believe that is so important, especially for women that's working in non-traditional fields, to be the representation, because just like some fields are male dominated for multiple reasons. Maybe it's physical labor or manual, something outside of a woman's physical body that it makes sense for more men to work in it. But if it's like a field, my personal opinion, like finance or engineering or something where a woman can use her brain, that I personally don't believe that should be male dominated. I just think we need more women in those positions so that other women can say, oh, okay, she's doing it, I can do it. Let me just go to school, get the certification, get the degree, get whatever I need to do, get a mentor, and I'm doing it too. So that's why representation is imperative when it comes to women redefining their success, for one, and when it comes to choosing a long-term career.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Be the representation. Or create what you don't see.
Create what you don't see. That is very true. I've definitely personally had a lot of that working in the film industry and also working in live events. But luckily for me, the field that I am in now, I see more women, and we have a genuine relationship. Everyone's supportive, and I think we get excited when we see each other. It's like, oh yay, another woman's working. Like I'm not alone. I think people miss that when we're in these spaces it's not even competition. It's community. It's like, yes, I'm so happy you're here. I feel safe.
Yeah.
My goodness. It's just a different level of safety that I never thought I would experience in the workplace until I transitioned to working in a male-dominated field. And I feel like it's definitely worth it if your intellect allow you to choose a certain field. But I definitely believe that it's worth it. So last question for you. I want to talk about some success stories. You mentioned earlier about someone you knew who was a physical therapist, right?
Mm-hmm.
And her office ended up shutting down 6 months later. She transitioned to a new career. She was happy. Love that for her. But would you be able to share another anonymous story or a case study of a client that you worked with personally who successfully redefined success?
Okay. Oh, let's see. That would have been the story that I shared, but I can share my own story. A little bit different because it was not so gender related as it was like culture, ethnicity related. So when I first got into counseling, mental health counseling, I was the only Black woman there, Black in general there. And so you have to work in a place under someone else for a year or supposedly 2 years before you can really do your own thing. And so I was there, and I recognized and realized that I was the only Black person there out of like 15 people. And I saw that, and initially I did not want to be there. After a couple of months, I just did not want to be there, and I was just determined to find another place to do my 1 year or 2 years at. And I looked and I couldn't find anywhere. And I heard God say, because when you leave that place, you have to stay until the change happens. So when I did leave this particular practice, they rewrote their employee handbook and their code of conducts and the expectations that they have for their therapists. And then I started my own practice a year later.
Oh my God. That's amazing. You created change and you didn't even know it. Like, you were just like, oh no, I'm gonna do my own thing. But you changed a company.
Yeah, a company that had been there for many, many years, and it wasn't just for me, but it was for any other person of color, really came after me, and it wasn't an easy journey, but it was mine. And I knew that it was mine because I had tried to turn around several times. I kept going. And so, it changed the culture of that entire practice.
Oh my God, I'm like stunned over here. See, ladies, this is what we're talking about being a representation. I'm pretty sure that was not in your plans walking in the door.
No.
When you realize you're the only Black woman in here, like, oh no,
Absolutely.
And you were sent there to change companies. Oh my God, that's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was, it didn't feel amazing in it. Eventually I accepted and understood my assignment there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I knew, okay, so when change occurs, then I get released from this. And I did.
So how did you know that it was time for you to transition out of that situation?
Because they began to change policies and procedures and rewrote their code of conduct, their employee handbook. I mean, they rewrote the entire thing. Mm. The culture was changed, and I believe they were ready for me to leave too, because I left before the year was up, and they did not penalize me. Yeah. It's interesting because we're very close now, the person that owns it. Yeah. So it doesn't always look like, that's the direction that we would be most comfortable traveling, but comfortability does not determine right or wrong.
I love that. What caused the change? Like, were you dealing with any kind of misogyny or racial issues? Like, what caused them to change the policy?
I think I was dealing with a little bit of everything, and it wasn't discrimination or anything like that as far as race goes, but it was just almost like a labor place. It was almost like bondage and modern day slavery at that particular place. And that's how I saw it, and that's how I communicated it with them. Because I communicated it with them that way, they were offended. And so that left like a bad taste in their mouth, so to speak. And so it was just difficult to work there after. And I wanted to leave, but I just kept pushing it. And then eventually she changed it.
Wow. So what I heard from that is basically you communicated standards. Like, because what if you wouldn't have said anything? You didn't have to say anything, and you could have just quit because you was the only Black woman there. But no, you stood up for yourself, and not even just for you. You opened doors for other women of color, other people of color to work at this building. I love that. My God.
Yeah. Initially, we were seeing 15 people a day, faced no lunch, nothing. It's like, this is just can't be correct. Let me go and read about this, because I don't like to talk about things that I don't know. So I went and read about it, and I came back and I was like, so you're not supposed to do this. You need to change the structure of this place. And they did.
Yeah. That's amazing. The very first episode of this podcast is about how to overcome being the only woman in the room. And I list the 3 C's: having confidence, being courageous, and curiosity. You are definitely confident in yourself, and you was courageous enough to even keep going, working for this company. The curiosity is what got me. You went like, okay, something's not right. Let me do my research to figure out what's going on here. I just love your braveness, like how you just stood up for yourself and the other people there. That's amazing. And I feel like that's something that I can take from you. Hopefully the other women listening to this podcast can take it. It's okay to stand up for yourself if you're dealing with any kind of workplace challenges. It's okay to be confident in yourself to say, you know what, this is not working. Let me speak up about it, because our voice in the workplace is so important. And I don't even think we as women realize how important that is. Look at the change you created.
Yeah, it's very important. Our voice is always important. And, and don't let anybody silence it. It's very important, because once you become the change that you want to see, it's not for you. Because I wasn't there when the change occurred. Like, I was there initially when they rewrote it, but when everything changed within it, I didn't have to work there. I had already moved on. So it's for someone else.
I love it. I love it so much. It's for someone else. That's perfectly said.
Absolutely.
Well, Miss Kimberly, that's all I have for you. Thank you so much for being on She Self-Invested podcast.
Well, thank you so much for allowing me to be a guest. I definitely look forward to all the other success stories that's going to come from this.
Thank you. Before we end this episode, would you like to tell our listeners where they can find you at if they possibly are in search for a counselor, if they're dealing with any kind of career changes or they're struggling with anything? Where can they find you? How can they book with you?
I'm on any social media, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram. You can find me under Rejected and Restored, or you can also go to my website, rejectedandrestored.com.
So ladies, you guys heard it from Miss Kimberly herself. You know where to reach her. You know where to contact her. And once again, this was such an empowering episode. I definitely feel a little bit inspired just from your story. Once again, thank you again for coming on. And I hope that you continue investing in yourself. Ladies, I hope that you ladies continue investing in yourself. Thank you for joining us for this inspiring conversation with Miss Kimberly on Redefining Success, letting go of others' expectations. Her story of implementing diversity in an established company and becoming a beacon of representation for women and people of color reminds us of the power of paving the way for those who come after us. She showed us that true success lies in standing firm in your values and creating a legacy of change. We hope this episode encourages you to define success on your own terms. Stay tuned for our final episode of the season. See you soon on She Self Invested.